Okay, so today's not a normal day. Today is a really big day. And today is a big day because it's not like the normal annual reviews that we have. That this is a Citibase 20-year review. So 20 years ago, David and Ian, who are over here, founded the company. So today is a really, really big event. This is 20 years since the birth of Citibase. And we thought we'd try and mark this special event by trying to get inside their heads. Getting inside the heads of successful entrepreneurs like David and Ian's not easy sometimes. So what we thought we would do is we would hire help. And we've hired from the BBC's Wake Up to Money, Jeremy Naylor. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. It's a real pleasure to be here. I am, at heart, a business journalist, and I'll go into that a little bit more later on, but I love asking questions. I've been a broadcast journalist for 25 years in total. I started off as a sports reporter for a local radio station. I was reading the news. But in 1995, I moved on to Bloomberg, and they gave me a position anchoring a TV show, doing nothing but business, which I thought, but it was great fun. I loved it, and I love speaking to businessmen. After I left Bloomberg in 2009, I went on to work, where I'm still today at the BBC, on Radio 5 Live. And I'm one of the few people still here in London. I know you probably all know that Radio 5 Live is based in Salford. But I am on the Wake Up to Money show. I'll be there, in fact, tomorrow morning at 5:30 if anybody fancies joining me on, you know the frequency. It's business. And as I say, I love speaking to business people. If you find someone that runs a business, you ask them about where they come from, what they've done, where they've been, the people they're with, the philosophy and so forth. It gives you a really good idea as to where the company is going. And I was given this by Steve. This is last year's review for the company. And I, as a journalist, anybody who wants to find out more about it, they can look at this. But I was particularly interested in the numbers. And I thought last year, revenues at this company that you all work for were up 22%. Don't forget, the UK was in recession last year. That's the sort of quality of company you're working for. There is nothing else for me to do other than just to get on with it because I'm desperate to meet these guys in more detail. I hope you are too. Ian Reid and David Joseph. Right, we've organised the seating arrangements because it's very important. The first question goes to the person that's closest to me. So we've got Ian here, so short straw. But it's great to talk to you both, and to have 15, 20 minutes with you is brilliant. As I said, as a journalist, it's always important to find out where people have been, where they're going. And as I said, it gives people an idea as to the forward-looking part of life. Where did you two meet? Where did it all start?
We first met when I was working with a company called London Edinburgh Trust. David was working for a company that had a joint venture with us, and the chairman there, for a particular project, put the two of us onto this, me to keep an eye on him to keep an eye on me, and...
That's never changed. Did he hit it off first meeting, David? Right, I think the interview's over.
That's very interesting. Ian's the sort of person that you're confronted by somebody who's got sort of kind of great intelligence, and you think, oh my goodness, this is actually quite intimidating, and then you get to know the person. You think, hey, this is great fun, and it very quickly turns up from this is somebody who. Yeah, I like this guy enormously, and that's developed through the 20 years. Interesting.
20 years. We'll get onto that in a bit more detail in just a minute. But did you feel as though you had something to make a business work when you first started? I mean, how did the business ideas start to mature?
Well, Citibase started in.
So this was your first business.
Moving on into 1992, right. When we both found in the property recession that was going on there that we were looking for something exciting and interesting to do, and David and I were meeting on a sort of regular basis, and one day when I was sitting there going through various numbers and things David said, yes, but how are we going to make money out of it?
Very important.
So it starts from there that it was that challenging each other to come up and say, well, there's the germ of an idea there. Now what are we going to do?
Did you make money out of it to begin with? How long did it take before you started to fulfill your ambition of making money?
Well, we're still working on it.
I think projects take a long time. The first project, probably from the time that that spreadsheet was Ian put the spreadsheet down on the table, to actually getting our first project was probably about 18 months. And during that time, we're doing other things, meeting regularly, and actually getting to know each other over that period. But then we got our first opportunity to set up our first business operation, which and the company that we set up, which changed its name several times and became Citibase, in the first instance was named Cameo Gold. Right. And that was just an off-the-shelf company, we thought, Cameo Gold, that doesn't sound right. But looking at it now and looking at the Olympics, you think, well, perhaps there's that sort of period of it turning gold and continuing. It's sort of quite an interesting, just sort of kind of anecdotal bit. But it was 18 months before we got our first project, and that was 150 Minories, which was a service office operation. And it...
Right in the City of London?
Right on the fringe of the City of London. And everybody said, you must be mad. A fringe building on the City of London, which has got not very many people in it. I don't think it had any people.
We were in a recession in 1992.
We were in a recession, and that the fringe there was basically a shipping and an insurance area, and both of those were pretty down on the heel. And people said, "But you can't do this." And what we said was, "No, this building is going to be special. It's going to be a building and a business centre, where small companies will be, and they will like having a service which there is no better service around." And people came to it because it did precisely that. It gave them a base to operate from, not too expensive, and right on the fringe of the city. And we got service companies in there.
So who was the first client, and how did you actually get them interested? Or did you find them looking?
We found, one day in particular, someone came spinning through the door into reception,
right,
ashen-faced, and David scurried across reception and said, "Well, what's wrong? We'll give you a cup of coffee." And what was wrong was he'd just been fired, and he couldn't believe what the insurance company he'd worked for had done to him. By 3 o'clock, we had him up and running, and he'd nicked his first customer off his old employer by 4 o'clock.
Was the business model there? Presumably, it was just a smaller version of what you've got now: a phone, a desk, and facilities.
Facilities and good staff to look after those people and help them grow their businesses.
And then where did it go from there? Because presumably you got this building and you got one person or one unit occupied. You then had to fill the rest.
Marketing is the essence of filling buildings is being out there and telling people about what you're doing, and the people you're talking to become your ambassadors, and it gradually filters out. The word spreads quite quickly, and the marketing machinery is just highly important, and that's the external facing, and having the right people in the building so that they know these small companies need support staff, and they need to be sure that when their customers come to visit them, that they are, and the customers are tremendously important to our clients, and they need to be treated properly. And it's the whole essence of making sure that everything runs smoothly, so that the outward-facing and the customer-facing business is essential to success.
You've got a lot of people here, obviously running very different sorts of centres. But what sort of client do you get now? What's the spread and the sector spread, if you like, or the interest spread, or how many people are in the units generally?
That's a good question. And our average customer will have 4 or 5 desks, and they're spread across a wide range of business types, and I suppose support services would probably cover a lot of them, but it's people who need good cost-conscious accommodation.
What about the geographic spread of where you are now? You built this business up, as you said, you were in the fringes of the city of London to begin with. Where did you move first? Because, I mean, the city is a very busy place in 1992. Despite the fact we were in recession, there was a lot going on, and obviously a lot of opportunities. What made you, first of all, look at other areas of the country?
Opportunity. The opportunity to grow is, I mean, it is, opportunity is such a core word for what we do, because we give our client companies the opportunity to have really good space, really good support staff, really good opportunity for them. And it's an entrepreneurial kind of mantra, really, that if something presents itself, is it something that fits within what the business objectives are, and you sort out the sort of, you sort it out as you go along. You have to be flexible, you have to be agile, and yes, to begin with, people said to us, but geographically, why are you spread so thin? Right. Well, that was a challenge. At one level, it still is a challenge, but it's also an enormous strength now, because whichever part of the country an opportunity comes up, we can actually manage it now. So that is something that's turned to be, could have been considered to be a weakness, now to be a strength, and that's fantastic.
Well, that's an interesting point, actually. And I mean, you got this business now running. You started in recession. You went through a recession. Here you are, as I just said, your turnover went up 20% plus, whatever it was last year. Another recession. What are you doing now with the business to provide yourself with the next springboard?
Well, I think recessions are the time when we take the opportunity to expand, because that is when we can get the raw material, the space, the property, at a sensible price, so that we can drive the business forward by opening more centres or taking on more centres that already exist where existing owners have got into trouble.
So it is the right time to
so
do that.
It's definitely the right time to expand. We didn't expand during the boom. We just couldn't get our heads around the risks people were taking.
No. In the 20 years you've been building up this company, others have come and gone in the sector. I'm interested, David, as to find out a little bit more about this, as to why you think this has happened. Clearly, Citibase is going from strength to strength, but others have not had that sort of... I'm not going to call it luck.
It isn't luck.
Or fortune. It's what?
Well, there has been very, very substantial consolidation in the marketplace. So I think that's the first point to small companies. The smaller companies find it more difficult because their central cost basis is much too high. So you've got to have a marketing ability, you've got to have an operational ability, you have got to have sort of kind of the senior team, finance director, CEO. Those high cost elements are difficult to support and have the right people in a small company. So you get economies of scale, and companies that took risks and got their cost base wrong have actually been absorbed by larger companies. So the failure, I would say, is to do with consolidation. And then you have the other side of the coin, which is the business. Leases come to an end, people on operational leases, and that has taken some operations out of the marketplace. So that's how I think I see and Citibase, as Ian said, we didn't take risks during the boom times. We're conservative in how and forward-thinking in how we grow the business, and I think that has proved to be another of our strengths.
How would you, Ian, assess the opportunities now than when you first started? Obviously, tiny company then, but I mean, do you think there are more opportunities at the moment? It's a very, very different economic dynamic than even it was then. Yes, we are in recession now. We were in recession then, but it's a global village now.
And I think things are very much tougher now than they were in the 1992 recession. Because it's global, and I think also the sort of retrenchment of business has been more of a shock to the system. And I think we're seeing changes in the way people are working and conducting their business lives, which play very much to our strengths. And the property world is changing and moving our way. The way people need to use and access office space has to become more flexible. And we're sitting in that space already, having staked out the ground. And the property owners don't necessarily have the skills that we have to...
So they're working in a symbiotic relationship with you to let their buildings and...
Very much so. There's a lot of people with a lot of problem buildings, and we are very much part of that solution.
How do you think you have both changed in that 20 years? I mean, David, it's obviously apart from the fact you're still looking extremely young and up for it, but we've 20 years, and as we said, the time is different. What have you learned? What would you do differently if you went back 20 years? This is when you say something and you say, Ian's got the answer to this. So, Ian,
I was waiting to hear what
David's thinking.
What would we do differently? I think that's really, really, really difficult to work out what you... I mean, there are... Some of the buildings that we've got are difficult. And if one could look back with the passage of time, you might say, would we have taken that building on? Well, but you've got opportunity at a time, and you don't know how the world is going to play out. So you have to say you move a portfolio forward, and the business is larger than its individual components. But what would I do differently? There is not one thing that I can say we would do differently. I think that what our strength is, that right from the beginning, we set out what our sort of philosophical opportunity was, which was to grow business villages. And I think that what we've done is that we've given so many small companies opportunities, people who, some have succeeded substantially, some have failed, but what companies, what small groups of people came to us in order to do was to have a support system which helped their businesses grow. And I think that those are the things that we look at, which I look at and feel very proud about. You know, if you look at 20 years of business and you say, how many businesses have we supported over that period? It's a very, very substantial number. And how many people have we employed? It's also a substantial number. I mean, we're close to a staff now of 150 people, and that's phenomenal. And people I think grow personally in this sort of environment because they have to take opportunities which are presented to them and deal with them. Some of them are difficult. Some of them are really difficult. And each individual working for us, I think, has a great opportunity. I think it's a fabulous and enterprising business which gives people both staff and clients really an exciting springboard. I think it's great.
Ian.
I'm supposed to have been thinking all that. I think, Dave, there are one or two transactions where you say, well, if we'd known that, we might have done it a bit differently. But, as Dave said, the philosophy would not have changed one bit, because I think it's as valid today as it was then. And it's always very difficult to say, right, well, go back and play the game knowing what you know, because presumably everyone else is doing the same. So you just have to tackle things as they're presented to you, but with a firm philosophy and a focus on the future and building a business that is going to stand the test of time.
David, before we sat down here, I should just say we had a chance to have a chat before we sat down here. And a couple of phrases came up during the chat beforehand, and David said something interesting. The power of two, which I thought was brilliant, is the fact that you obviously work together, but there's a different angle to come at on the same problem. And clearly you work very well together. Explain a bit more about this power of two. I mean, if there was only one of you, do you think you'd only have got halfway or less? Or
I think that individually, I certainly couldn't have done what Citibase has done by myself and the other businesses that we've grown. It just would not have happened. And I think that the business environment is amazingly complex. And you have to cover, certainly as a business such as Citibase, so many different specialties that I don't think one person ever could do it by themselves. I don't think so. I think they have to be very, very special, and so you need to build a team. And I think to have two people in an equal relationship where it is important rather than necessarily sort of one person who's an entrepreneur who's employing, because then I think the relationships change. So my own view is that one and one didn't make 3; it made about 17. And I think that's really, really important.
That's a really important point. I think it's the fact that working well together produces gives you more productivity. I suppose the comedy equivalent would be all those lovely people you know on television, the Eric and Ernie and the two Ronnies and so forth, working very well together by themselves. Perhaps maybe one might wonder whether or not they were as good as they were together. Do you think there will ever be a point where you say, that's it, we've worked together too long?
Sorry. You bet.
It's interesting. The reason why I asked that is because I have known chief executives who they've been powerful, they've been they've just gone their own way, and they've been all commanding. You clearly work very well together. Where are you going? I mean, where's Citibase going?
Well, I think one of the things is that the business has grown to a size now. It has a life of its own way beyond us. I mean, we've employed a very good top team, a very good team top to bottom in the business. So it's not about us, it's about them.
As co-founders, very briefly, as co-founders, does that sort of upset you a little bit, the fact that you don't know everybody, you haven't got your hand on everything? Does that frustrate you at some point?
It's quite a transition to go through of when a business gets to the size where you can't know everything that's going on. And I think going back to your earlier question, I've got the answer now, what would we do differently is actually accept that earlier in the process. Because that was a real struggle to go through the point at which we could say there's things going on in the business that we don't know about. And that's actually quite difficult to move through. We've moved through that, and that, I think, gives us the ability to say we've got good people. The business is driving itself to some extent. I hope we're not going to be chucked out, but it's.
What's the message then to your very able and very competent workforce that have helped you in driving this business along? They've obviously they know the business well, as you say, and they're taking it on for you. What's the message from the top, David? Sorry. Yes, let's go, David first.
The message is that there's opportunity. There's always opportunity to. I think people have also a whole range of skills, and what I've always wanted people to do is to develop those skills and to do what they do as well as they possibly can. And everybody makes mistakes. That's fine. We absolutely accept mistake, because if you're pushing your boundaries the whole time, you are going to make mistakes. But the thing about mistakes is you learn by them, you put your hand up and you say, what do I do with this now? But it's the opportunity to develop each individual to develop their skills, and that's what I love. That's what is giving people those jobs, that opportunity to develop their skills and do it the best way they possibly can.
I think what I would say is, the business is well positioned. Let's go out there and conquer the world.
Go out there and conquer the world. I mean, that sounds a pretty good, strong message from two gentlemen that have built this business up over 20 years and has produced, where you are now and where you're going to go this evening. And it's a pleasure to talk to people that have kept with it and presumably have every intention of staying with it, because businesses do move on, they do evolve, they do grow, which is really nice to see. But I look forward to being invited back perhaps maybe in 20 years' time, and we'll all look back and think, those were good times, weren't they? But they're obviously even better to come, and it's been a pleasure, and I've really enjoyed it. David, good to talk to you. Ian, and the very best of luck.